Felix here. We just got data out, which is pretty shocking. I really couldn't quite believe it. I knew the US was an expensive place to live, and I know that most salaries are scandal, quite frankly, and you can't really live very well on it, but this data is insane. So they did a massive kind of poll research on what's the living cost in the US and what do you need to actually live a decent life as a family of four. And the average number you need as an income to live reasonably well in the United States is not 100K. It's $177,000 on average. Now, there are, of course, some states that are a little bit cheaper, like Mississippi or something like that. But there are also plenty of places like Maine. You need $300,000 to live a basically decent life in Maine. And that's insane because most jobs don't pay $300,000 or $177,000. And it's kind of why I keep banging on about this. You need an income stream outside of your salary because your salary is very, very rarely going to be sufficient to make you really wealthy, allow you to retire, allow you to travel the world. Like I'm just driving around the south of France here. We're literally just leaving the Cannes Film Festival. And that freedom, unfortunately, takes money. So a lot of people are saying, oh, you don't need money and money is bad and all that kind of thing. And it's the exact opposite. Money is the one thing that gives you freedom. It's glorious. It's just we've often been brought up by people who had lack of money and therefore they paint it into the corner and they say it's bad. And the people who have it, they did something weird, something dodgy, something crooked, or, you know, whatever. And it's an excuse to make themselves feel better because they didn't figure out how to get it. So rather than do that and point the finger at somebody who's got more than you, just follow some people who have more than you and figure out what they have done and learn it and apply it. And it's not as difficult as you think. Now, there are a couple of mistakes that most beginner investors and traders make. And if you don't know me, I used to work in a bank for a little while. I've been trading for, I don't know what, 20 years. We have a whole academy. We've got a bunch of market makers and hedge fund managers inside of our team. And we've got a pretty good grasp of what's going on out there. And we've taught like 10,000 people or so far and got them on their path to financial freedom. Now, the first mistake people make is what? They don't invest now. They wait. They wait for, oh, I'll make more money next year. I'll make more money in 2 years. And that used to be me. When I set up my first business after I quit the corporate world, I was like, I'll make more money in 2 years and then I'll invest because I'll have a lot more. And it doesn't make sense right now. I haven't got the time and so on. And that's the biggest mistake because time in the market is literally the one thing that's gonna pay off, right? So that's the most important thing. And I think I'm just taking the wrong turn here. So I've got to turn left and be a bit dodgy by going in the wrong direction. Exactly. So that's the first thing, right? So if you are thinking about it, do it. Don't wait. So what would you do as a first step? Of course, this isn't financial advice, but the first step to do is just buy an index fund. I'm not a huge fan of them, but it's a heck of a lot better than having that money sit in your savings account and get worth a lot less. House prices in the US in the last 4 years have gone up 47%. It's almost 50% more. Has your money gone up 50%? If it hasn't, it's declined in value. So if it's sat in your bank account, that money is now worth 50% less. Right? So super, super important to deploy your savings. That's point number one. Now, point number two is kind of related, and that's a hugely common mistake. And that's basically people are like, I'll wait for the next crash. Right now, it's such a crazy boom bubble. This can never last. And I'm going to wait for the crash. Well, guess what? You've probably been waiting for a crash for like, what, 15 years? Are we going to get another crash? Well, with the wimps and corrupt officials running the country who are spending trillions of dollars of borrowed money to buy themselves the next election, and this goes across all US parties. This is not a dig at particularly Biden. Trump was just as bad. They're all just as bad. They only care about themselves and getting elected. The debt-fueled asset price increases, in my opinion, will continue because I don't see you Americans going, I'm going to vote for the guy who's going to increase my taxes and who's going to make me poorer and who's going to decrease house prices and who's going to crash the stock market. You're not going to do it, are you? You're going to vote for the guy who's just going to keep printing money and keep causing inflation. And why? Because if you have assets, and the people who run the country have assets, right? They've got stocks. Nancy Pelosi, right? She's worth like $250 million. She made a $20 million return, I think, this year on her portfolio. And she gets paid like a $200,000 salary, which is just about enough to live a decent life, but she doesn't live off the salary, she lives off the asset prices. So there's the Speaker of the House. What do you think the House is going to do? The House is going to make sure that asset prices keep increasing because the people in the House have a lot of assets. That's the fundamental reality that we're in right now, right? So what's the next mistake then? Once you get invested and you kind of get over this hump that, okay, the market's going to keep going up, probably in the long run. In the long run, it definitely will. So the smart thing is just to invest every month or every week. Well, the next thing then is people buy on emotions. And you think, oh my God, Nvidia's gone up this much, or it was Tesla before that, or whatever it is, the flavor of the month. And you jump in on it because somebody at work claims he made 100% returns on something. Now you buy after he's made the 100% returns, and therefore you're overpaying and you're probably losing money, and it sucks, right? So you've got to remove the emotions from investing. How do you do that? You have to have a checklist on which you buy stocks. Now, if you go on our, literally go on our playlist that's called educational videos, watch those, and you walk away with a checklist, and then you'll have some real hard criteria by which you select stocks. Now you're no longer FOMO investing, you no longer keep buying things that are about to drop. So that's really, really important. That's number 3. Is it 3 or is it number 4? Hard to keep track. Now, once you've done that, most people, again, sell their winners too early. Look at the really great stock runs, the Apples, the Microsofts, the Googles. If you bought those 20 years ago and you just bought them every month since, you would have made an absolute fortune. So just because something goes up a lot doesn't mean you should sell it and you're like, oh my God, I need to lock in the profits. I'm a huge fan of taking profits if you're trading. If you want to learn how to trade, might sound complicated, but it isn't. I'm running a beginner's live training session on Tuesday evening, 5 p.m. So start this week off with an absolute banger and join me on Tuesday evening, 5 p.m. felixfriends.org/webinar. Link is down below. It's completely free of charge and you don't need to know a thing. You don't even need to have a brokerage account, like zero knowledge assumed. But how do you know when to sell? Well, again, you need to have the checklist of why you bought the stock. And there are bunch of metrics we look at, things like gross margins, for example. And if you look at those, and it's really easy to do, it'll literally take you a minute every 3 months to check that data. All you need is a notepad and you write it down and you see, are the numbers getting better or are they getting worse? If they're getting better or they're staying the same and the stock keeps going up, you're happy. If they're getting worse and the stock's gone up, well, maybe that's the time to take some profits, right? But you now have a rule for it. You're no longer just sort of going with the emotions. The one thing I learned the hard way as a trader is that emotions are our enemy. We are not wired, we're not naturally good at investing or trading. And therefore we need to recognize that, and we need to build a system and some rules, written rules that we can follow or even automate. Like the way I trade, it's all automated. All the profit taking, all the risk management, it's all automated. Why? Don't trust myself. and no, nor does anybody else. Like no trader out there who's good at what they do trusts themselves. We know we have the inbuilt, like, you know, we basically are greedy and we are loss averse. So we hate taking losses and we wait too late, too long, basically. We're always hoping to get a little bit more out of it. Once you understand that, and you can understand how you can literally click a switch inside your brokerage, any brokerage anywhere in the world, and automate that process, well, you could potentially actually make some really nice income and make your money work for you so you don't have to work for money. The 99% work for money. The 1% have their money work for them. Nancy Pelosi is not Speaker of the House for that $200,000 salary. She probably doesn't even notice it. That's not what she's there for. She's there for whatever personal ambitions. And it gives us some pretty good inside information on what's going on in the world, and make 20 million a year on her money, right? So her money is making, what, 100 times what she is making. That's what the rich do. And if you want to move in that direction, which is the only place you're going to be able to live a decent life, because the $300,000 you need now in Maine to live, in like 5 or 10 years in Mississippi, you'll need a $300,000. It'll just be inflation. Now you might think, but hang on, Felix, inflation is coming down, isn't it? Yeah, but prices don't go down. The speed at which prices are increasing is coming down, but very unlikely they're going to go down again. So the massive inflation we've had since COVID is here to stay. It's not going to get reversed. Houses are not going to get cheaper. Services are not going to get cheaper, right? I just had lunch for $230 US, right? 10 years ago, that probably would have been $50 in the same place. Is that going to get more expensive next year? Probably. And in 10 years, it might be double. So you have to have assets, money that works for you, because your salary isn't going to double in that time period. And the salary, the only job of the salary is to have some money that you can actually put to work. But if you miss that component, you're going to struggle, like the 99%. And it's not a fun thing to talk about. Nobody really wants to talk about it. Everyone's just like, you know, get some more debt. But that doesn't actually solve the problem. This way you get out of this, and the way I got out of this, is by making my money work for me. And if you want to learn how I do that, I'm not promising you any returns, that would not be honest. All I'm promising you is to show you exactly what I do and how I do it. And then if you want to learn more, we can do that, or you just take all the resources, you take the 3-step system that we have, and you apply it yourself, and you start to learn. And I'll teach you also on Tuesday how you can practice that with zero risk, like literally zero risk. You're not going to lose any money learning, and that's really the important thing, the way we do it. So come and join me on Tuesday. Let me know down below in the comments what you make of these figures. Do you think $177,000 is enough to live on in the US if you're based there? Or do you think the number is off? Do you think you need more? Do you think you need less? I'd love to hear from you. And let's keep building this community where we help each other grow, put that money to work, and actually enjoy a beautiful, glorious life. As I'm driving here just past Cap d'Antibes, which is again one of the most glorious places in Europe. If you haven't been to the south of France, come ideally in May or in September, when most of the tourists aren't here yet, and it's absolutely glorious. And I thank you for watching. I thank you for tuning in. Smash the you-know-what, and see you on the next one. I'm very excited for our guest today, Andrew Henderson. Some of you might know him better as the Nomad Capitalist, or perhaps the CEO of Nomad Capitalist, a man with more passports than most, and perhaps pays less tax than most, for all good reasons, I'm sure. And I'm thrilled to have you here, Andrew, because A, it's something that's fair